I do want to thank Diane and the staff in our performance office who really did an incredible job with this data in terms of the analysis and the presentation, and that was certainly something that was recommended, that was recognized in the feedback that we received from OSEP as well. This is the very specific wording of our Connecticut SIMR to increase the reading performance of all third grade students with disabilities statewide, as measured by our ESA Flexibility Performance Index. As Diane said, we've kind of taken a pause from that for this year. The development of this plan, timing-wise, was a bit problematic as we were in the midst of the perfect storm of moving from one statewide assessment to another, having to set baselines and targets, knowing that we were moving from one assessment to another one where we didn't really know what the results were going to necessarily look like, though that was the same challenge that states across the nation were experiencing as well, so that wasn't something that was specific to us. As Diane indicated, that what we really came to in a conclusion as we looked at all of the information was that, and there were many states that were doing what seems to be a more one-size-fits-all kind of plan, that just wasn't going to work here in Connecticut as we looked at the literacy achievement of students with disabilities, particularly those early literacy numbers related to third grade. So it sort of logically brought us to a more differentiated approach to addressing district-specific needs, district-specific improvement plans. And the other thing that we were trying to factor in was how do we do this work without making this one more thing for districts to have to take on. So that sort of brought us to the logical conclusion of utilizing what we've had in place historically and that we kind of used as a bit of a pilot this past year, and that would be our focus monitoring work with districts. So what you see here in yet another pyramid, because we do after all in special ed love our pyramids, sort of a graphic representation of what goes on in the focus monitoring process that we've sort of morphed into informing this SSIP work that we'll be doing moving forward. Looking at the compliance review, looking at data, doing that again across the cohorts that have been reorganized over the course of the last year or so, looking at the submission of data walls by a subset of districts, looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 15, and then identifying those specific districts as we have historically through focused monitoring as the districts that we would be working with on site addressing their data relative to third grade reading. This provides you kind of a graphic representation of what the process looks like as we look at cohorts over the course of the next 3 years. Where what you can see on the bottom there is this is how the 170 or so districts in the state fall out in terms of where they fall, cohorts A through C. And kind of what will be in place in terms of supports and intervention at each one of those levels. Again, stealing that sentiment from our work in focused monitoring. One of the things that as Diane mentioned, 15 districts is certainly more than we as a bureau have the capacity to work with in terms of the on-ground work that we've historically done and will continue to do with our partners at CERC. What we're looking at in the identification of those 15 districts is some districts whose work will be orchestrated through the work of the Bureau and our state systemic improvement plan, and additionally those districts who are already identified and already being supported through our turnaround work through the alliance districts. That work will be happening kind of in a parallel way, orchestrated by the folks doing the alliance work apart from and in conjunction with the work that we're doing through the Bureau. This kind of looks specifically in a very general way of what we're looking at in terms of providing supports, looking at interventions, and the expectations of where districts will fall depending on which tier they fall into. So we're looking at all of the districts in the state being provided with resources, professional learning modules. We're making available our focus monitoring protocol so that if as a district you're interested on your own to do your own data analysis, root cause analysis, and the development of a plan specific to third grade reading, we'll give you the information and you can take it and have at it if that's your choice. Again, as we look at sort of funneling out of Tier 1 into Tier 2. There will be that subset of districts that will be required to submit a data wall, looking specifically in this instance at that third grade reading data. And then we'll look at where we go from there in terms of there will be a group of districts, 6 or so, that will be selected out of that group that will be the Tier 3 districts that we'll be in district working with. We may require, depending on what the data wall information tells us, we may require the completion of an improvement plan in certain instances. We won't know that until we do the analysis of that information and what the data wall suggests. And then, as I said, we will be on the ground working specifically with districts around the development, looking at both further data analysis, root cause analysis, and the development of a theory of action and an improvement plan focused on improving the performance of students with disabilities relative to third grade reading. I will say that as we look at the components of what we anticipate those plans to be, one of the components that we're also envisioning as a part of each one of those plans is something that looks at engaging parents relative to the reading performance of their students, again, kind of keeping in with the theme of this morning's presentation of not overlooking that parent piece in terms of its importance as it relates to the performance of students, particularly in the area of reading. This graphic, including, of course, a triangle, is kind of just a representation of what we see the sort of the pieces of the plan being, sort of our partners working with us in terms of trying to meet our goal of improving the performance of students in the area of reading. And again, all of this information is posted in our, on our website as well. As we move forward into phase 2, which is what we're undertaking moving forward right now, looking at continuing our infrastructure development, supporting LEAs in their implementation of evidence-based practices, and the development of an evaluation plan. When we talk about evaluation here, we're looking at a couple of things. We're looking at evaluation with regard to outcomes in terms of the effectiveness of the plan, but we're also looking at evaluation as it relates to the fidelity of the implementation of whatever plan has been proposed and devising ways of being able to address that as well. You know, as Diane mentioned, the excitement about you folks being invited into this process. We've been invited to host OSEP next week, and as a matter of fact, this time next week, they'll be at 165 Capitol Avenue with us, and helping us through this process and kind of providing us some ongoing feedback with regard to the work as it relates to moving forward into phase 2. Again, our submission relative to this plan this year will be, again, in April. The final stage of the plan includes both full implementation and our reporting on the results of the evaluation of not only the results, but the implementation of the plan as well. That's my contact information as the Bureau contact relative to the plan. As Diane said, the letters are being drafted as we speak. So those of you that are in Cohort A and can expect notification fairly soon with regard to where we are in terms of identifying the subgroup of districts that we'll be working with over the course of the next year. This is hard work, but it's exciting work. It really pushes us to do something that, as the data suggests, is really, really crucial for us here in the state of Connecticut, and particularly for our subset of students whose reading performance really does need to improve. It's also provided us a huge opportunity as a department to sort of work across bureaus, offices, again, toward the same aim. So we look forward to being out in district with you, doing this work. We thank you for your assistance, and you'll be hearing more about this over the course of the next year. Thank you.